MovieWeb.com.
The first question I want to ask, and I want you to be honest with me, as a writer, when you sit down to write this movie and you get kind of stuck, do you ever pull out the Stargate action figures to try to kind of figure out the scene?
Daniel, what do you... No, I don't. I really don't. But it would be fun to do that. In fact, Stargate action figures are so new that I don't even have one. I don't have a Stargate action figure.
You don't?
I don't. I don't have one. Most of my writers have them in their offices. I don't have one.
Well, I want to ask you about Richard Dean Anderson. Now, did you write him into the script from the very beginning, or was that something you wrote into the script after it had already been completed?
No, there's a version of the script with him in it, and then there's a version with him out, and then there's a version with him in it again, and then there's a version... It went back and forth. Pardon me, I have to burp.
Oop.
Sorry.
Why did you have to go back and forth and write?
Well, I wrote it with the intention of including him. To me, Stargate isn't Stargate without Richard Dean Anderson in it, and I really wanted him to be in the movie. So I wrote it with him in mind, and I called him and I said, "Rick, I'm putting you in this movie." Whether or not I didn't know whether or not the deal could be made, so I wrote a version afterwards without him.
Okay, well, my viewing audience is most likely the fans of the series is going to see this interview after they see the movie. And I think this is one question they're all going to have is what happens to Lieutenant Colonel Mitchell after he's on that ship?
That's a cool question. There's actually, what happens between 1929 and 1939 is another. What did Mitchell do in that time? He had to just bide his time and not change the timeline just to make sure that he was on that ship when it left to do what he needed to do. And of course, there's that one photograph of him and his grandfather at the very end of the movie, which kind of gives you a clue that he's going to have a good life and that he's going to be okay, but he can't change the timeline, so he has to live very quiet, very unassuming life, because even though he knows World War II is about to happen, he can't change anything.
Even after he saves the ship?
Because he can't change his own timeline.
Now, do you think if you do another movie like this, you're going to go back and kind of focus on that or tell a little bit maybe of that story?
You know, it's funny. I love that everybody comes away from the movie wondering about that period of time. Well, wait a minute. Well, what was Mitchell doing between 1939 and wait a minute, what did he do after that? He lived his life. I'm not sure there's a movie there, but there is an interesting story there.
Maybe just like a little scene.
Yeah, well, we don't tend to make scenes. That's the problem.
No. Oh.
Let's get together and make a scene, everybody.
Just one scene. But, no, I thought the movie also kind of had a little bit of a feel like Philadelphia Experiment, and I'm wondering if that was an influence on this.
Maybe subconsciously, not intentionally. I think all time travel films have to have a certain structure. The one thing that makes this different from other time travel films, stories that we've done in Stargate, is that we remembered, because we were in the Stargate when we left, as the timeline was changing, we retained all of our own identities and all of who we are. So we're this displaced team in the wrong timeline, and that to me was the fun part.
Now, when you set out to write a standalone movie like this, and you have so many fans, do you ever get to a part in the script where you stop and you're like, that might upset a fan? Or do you ever even consider them?
Well, of course. It's my job as a writer to try to upset a fan, to try not necessarily make them mad at me, but certainly to play with their emotions and to make sure that they're excited at certain points and sad at other points. And there's a couple of times in this movie where, I can imagine they're ready to pick up the pen and write me a nasty letter, and then of course they'll be okay. They'll put the pen down later in the movie.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
What you mean? Like,
I can say it now because this is going to be afterwards.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Okay. Well, when what happens to O'Neill, I still can't bring myself to say it on camera, but when O'Neill meets his end in the opening scenes, I think people are going to be pretty upset. And then when we leave Daniel on the ice, I think people are going to be pretty upset. It'll be okay.
They are going to be upset.
And then when they see shot stills or scenes of Daniel missing his leg below the knee, that's going to make people mad at me too. But it'll all turn out okay.
Well, he's still missing a leg, right?
No.
Oh.
That timeline ceases to exist.
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry.
You weren't paying attention.
I was paying attention, but the wormholes get me all mixed up.
That's true.
Well, the one more question I got to ask is, now, if Stargate hadn't come into your life, where would your doppelganger be at this point?
I'd be working in television somewhere. hopefully, maybe even making films. I was this close to doing a Star Trek when I was doing The Outer Limits, and then I got offered Stargate. So who knows? But different alternate realities is something I write about. It's not so much something I think about in my own life.
You'd have one leg.
I might have one leg if I, lost it in a sinking ship in the Arctic. If that had happened to me, then I would definitely, yeah.